under
3 seconds to go. Throws up the floater. Golf class. Good night.
Now that was some play. He hasn't taken any off-balance shot. Now as he goes up in the air, he banks the ball and plays it right off the glass.
Another moment indelibly etched in time for the Cleveland Cavaliers and LeBron James.
Hi. Welcome to Game Changers. Welcome to Game Changers. So the Raptors scrapped and scrounged and did everything they could, and they were down 17 points. They tied the game up with 8 seconds left in the game. But some dude by the name of LeBron James got the ball to the far end of the court, and he dribbled up. And as you saw on the screen, just before he hit the end zone, he went up on 1 foot and then lofted the ball off the glass and into the basket. And the Raptors lost the game. The buzzer went just as he did that, and they lost 105-103. The shot was obviously a game changer, but it was more than just simply a game changer to that particular game. The Raptors had been down 2-0 in the best-of-7 series. This was the playoffs, and the first team to 4 wins, and now they were down 3-0, and you don't win when you're down that far. So it was a game changer for the whole series. But not only that, that play was one of the key ones that caused the firing of the Raptors coach and the trading this week of the best player in their history. That particular move was an incredible game changer. My name's Ken, and I want to welcome you here this morning. This is Creekside, and whether you're on our website watching online, or whether you're down at our Kitchener campus or here in Waterloo, we want to just tell you how delighted we are that you're a part of what we're doing today. We are starting a brand new series. We're going to finish up the summer with it, called Game Changers. For 6 weeks, we're going to look at these events, these things that happen that can really change the trajectory of your life. So you know what a game changer is, right? A game changer happens in a sporting event when one team that's going in this direction, maybe not doing too well, makes a decision, makes a play, and after that play, the whole trajectory of the game changes, and they win the game. There's a critical play that makes that happen. Well, what we're doing in this series is we're looking into the Bible at truths from the Bible that are like game changers. They can have a huge impact in your life in a number of dimensions in your life. And each week we're going to be doing that, and we're picking on a sports theme, so you're going to see jerseys all throughout the series as we look at this whole idea of how can we grab hold of this truth and make a huge difference in our lives. Now for me, this morning, my game changer is in the form of a question. It's a question that I'm going to repeat a few times during our time together, that if you can grab hold of this question and make this question applicable in your life, that it will be a game changer for you no matter your circumstance, difficulties, or great success, boredom in life, filled with fear, filled with anxiety, whatever it may be, this particular question can really help you. And I want to unpack the question it's kind of a little different kind of question. So I want you to imagine, in order to understand the question, I want you to imagine that this is you, or this is me, or whomever, and you're in the middle of a circumstance. And the circumstance that you're in the middle of is, it could be, again, it could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, whatever it is, there's a situation that you're in the middle of. And what you want to do is you want to step outside of the situation that you're in the middle of, and you want to look back at yourself in that situation, and you ask yourself this question. And here's how it comes out. What would a person in my situation do if that person knew that God was with them? There's my situation. Again, it could be a good situation, it could be a tough situation, decision-making decision, I'm feeling beat up kind of situation that I'm in. What would a person who was in my situation, sitting in my chair, what would that person do if that person knew that God was with them? So what the question does is it pulls you out of the emotion and the chaos of the moment and says, what would somebody else do who believed that God was with them? Now, this is a great question. I wish I told you that I came up with the question. I didn't. A guy by the name of Andy Stanley did. But I want to unpack this question with us today and make application. And to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go all the way back into the Old Testament, the very first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, and we're going to look at the life of a man whose name was Joseph. And what we're going to do when we look at Joseph's life is I'm going to unpack this question as it relates to his life. Now, you know a little bit about Joseph. If you know anything about the Bible, you know that he was born into a very wealthy family. His great-grandfather Abraham was one of the wealthiest men in the world at that time. His father, Jacob, later called Israel, was extremely wealthy, had a bunch of children. One of his sons was a boy named Joseph. And Jacob, or Israel, absolutely loved Joseph. And if you remember, here's what the text says for us. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he'd been born to him in his old age. And he made an ornate robe for him. Sometimes we call it a robe of many colors. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. This robe was a robe that said, Dad loves me most, okay? Dad loves me best. Not only that, some believe the robe actually declared, and I get the biggest part of the inheritance. So you can imagine as Joseph is hanging out at home, he's wearing this robe, this neon robe that he's walking around with. And basically it's saying, Dad loves me best, and I get most of the money, na. And you can imagine the kind of relationship that happened with his brothers. Well, on top of that, he would have these dreams, and he would dream, and he would then come downstairs and sit at the kitchen table with the coat on, doing this kind of, hey guys, I had a dream again last night. Guess what happened? You all bowed down to me, and worshiped me. What do you think of that? Well, here's what the text says they thought of it. And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said to them. Now, you recall that then what happens is that there's one day when Joseph is going to visit his brothers a long way from home. They see him coming, and they decide to kill him. Then they get thinking, it's probably not a really good idea. Let's just sell him because there's a slave caravan that's coming by. So they sell Joseph to the slave caravan, and they take this caravan on its way to Egypt, and they're done with him. They obviously are going to break their father's heart. They lie to their father and say they found him dead. They take the coat, they dip it in animal's blood, and so on and so forth. And when Joseph gets down to Egypt, he gets sold as a slave. And here's what you read. When Joseph was taken to Egypt by the Ishmaelite traders, he was purchased by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer. Potiphar was captain of the guard for Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Now, in this verse, there is a phrase that comes up over and over and over again in the life of Joseph. And the phrase is this one: the Lord was with Joseph. Can you say that with me, please? The Lord was with Joseph. The Lord was with Joseph. You'll notice, just imagine this. Imagine that you're Joseph. He's like 17 years of age when this happens to him. He just got his driver's license. He's going through puberty. Zits on his face, a little bit of peach fuzz showing up on his cheeks. And here he is, a long way from home, in a different culture that speaks a different language, that has different ways of doing things, and he is now a slave. As far as he knows, he's always going to be a slave. He's going to exist as someone's going to be his master. Here he has come from this posh, wealthy home. He's in this particular context. Slaves don't live long. They don't get the best kind of food. They don't get treated the best. So his life looks really dark and awful. And what if somebody came up to him and just whispered in his ear at this moment, I want to tell you something, Joe. The Lord is with you. I wonder how he would have felt. I wonder if he would have said, well, I thought God was like large and in charge. And if the God who's large and in charge is with me, why is this happening to me? Why would it be happening to me? Why wouldn't it be happening to my brothers? They're the ones who hate me. Why wouldn't it be happening to my brothers? They're the ones who did this to me. Why am I experiencing this in my own life? But Joseph takes this truth that the Lord is with him, and he doesn't just acknowledge it, he actually lives it. He takes this truth that the Lord is with him, even in a difficult situation, and he lives this truth out. You look what happens. Potiphar noticed this, that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. He sees that Joseph has God in his life. This pleased Potiphar, so he made Joseph his personal attendant. He put him in charge of entire household and absolutely everything that he owned. Now here's the question. What would a person in my situation do if that person knew that God was with them? What would a person in my situation do? What if Joseph asked this question? What would a person in my situation do? They've been sold out by their brothers. They're down here in prison. What would a person in my situation do if that person knew that God was with them? They would acknowledge God. They would live for God. They would esteem God. Well, if it's not bad enough to be rejected by your family and sold as a slave, Potiphar's wife has a thing for Joseph. She tries to seduce him. He refuses to do that. And one day he runs, she hangs onto his coat. And when her husband comes home, she says to Potiphar, "He tried to rape me. I screamed and he ran. Here's his coat." And the text reads, Potiphar was furious when he heard his wife's story about how Joseph had treated her. So he took Joseph and threw him into the prison where the king's prisoners were held, and there he remained. He's now a convicted, attempted rapist. But the Lord was with Joseph, notice that again, in the prison, and showed him his faithful love, and the Lord made Joseph a favorite with the prison warden. Before long, the warden put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners over everything that happened in the prison. The warden had no more worries because Joseph took care of everything. The Lord was with him and caused everything he did to succeed. The Lord was with him. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm Joseph at this particular point, I'm going, oh, man, God, can you be with my brothers for a little while, and rather than be with me, so I don't have to go through this terrible experience? Could you just pull that one off? I mean, it's not like the warden's a bad guy, but I never really dreamt about getting to know a warden in a prison really well, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. And in fact, kind of I wouldn't mind, kind of being at home without you than being with you in prison. Does he ever feel that way? I don't know. I'm sure he wrestled with it. What guides you? What guides your emotions? What guides your perspective? What guides your decisions? Life situations or God's promises? How do you handle those difficult situations? Do you allow the circumstance to become dominant over you? Does the circumstance become your God? Or do you go back to the promises of God, and one in particular that we're talking about today, that he said he would never leave you or forsake you? There's a question that I heard. I'm not sure if you've heard of this question. It goes like this. What would a person in my situation do if that person knew that God was with them? What would they do? As if that's not bad enough, there's a time in which Pharaoh has a butler and a baker, and he gets ticked off with them, and he ships them off to prison. And they manage to connect with Joseph while they're in prison. And these two guys have dreams. So they wake up one morning, both of them having had a separate individual kind of dream, and they go to Joseph and they say, here's the dreams that we had. You know anybody who might be able to interpret them? And Joseph says, well, let me give it a shot. And so he basically says to the baker, well, here's what your dream means, and I'm sorry to tell you this, but in 3 days from now, you're going to be hung. It's not a good thing to tell somebody. And then he says to the other guy who's the cupbearer, who's the butler, he says, in 3 days from now, you're going to be released and put back into your former condition. You're going to be put back into this place of prominence. And then he says to the butler, whatever you do, remember me. Remember me when you get back into the palace. But the butler forgets. He totally forgets. In fact, here's what we understand, that from the time that Joseph is sold by his brothers when he's 17 years of age, to the time when the butler, and after the butler forgets, is about 12 years. So this kid is now 29 years of age, 28 years of age, and everything has been going down, 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 down. And yet in the middle of that context, he is someone who deeply believes that God is with him and responds, even in the ugliness of his life, to this reality that God is with him. That's what he believes. That's how he practices it. What do you do with circumstances? And what do you do with God's promises? Do you have peace in your life because of the circumstances that are around you? Or do you have peace in your life because you know God is with you? What causes peace in your life? Now, peace can do that. I understand that. But is God with me? Does that bring you peace too? Or how about confidence? Where do you get your confidence from to make decisions, to step out, to pray, to so on? Is it because God is with you that you have confidence, or is it because of the circumstances that brings you confidence? Or how about strength? What makes you strong on the inside? Is it circumstances being the way you want them to be, or is it the fact that God is with you? Are circumstances your God? Do circumstances control your life? Are you like a yo-yo, up and down with your circumstances, or are you rooted in the stability that God is with you? And let me ask you this question. What would a person in my situation do if that person knew that God was with them? Because that question can become so pointed and so specific for us, so real in our lives. And this truth about God being with us is found all throughout Scripture. Isaiah puts it this way. So do not fear, for, can you read the words with me? I am with you. Do not be dismayed. Don't be filled with fear. Remember, I'm with you. Don't let the circumstances dictate fear. Don't be filled with fear. Don't be confused or dismayed about circumstances. For I am your God. I will what? Give you strength, not just circumstances, me. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you. I will keep you with the right hand of my righteousness. Clearly, this is a beautiful thing. One of my favorite verses, Zephaniah 3:17. The Lord, your God, is with you. Can you read that with me? The Lord, your God, is with you. He is mighty to save. He will take great delight in you. He will quiet you with his love. He will rejoice over you with singing. And then we all know this verse from Psalm 23. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Can you say it with me? For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. This is so important for us to understand. So Joseph's life goes down, 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 down. As I mentioned, he's like 28, 29 years of age, hasn't been home, hasn't seen home, hasn't connected at all in any way for all these years. It couldn't get any darker in his life than this. And he's been honoring God in how he's lived out his life, yet the circumstances seem to be in conflict with what he's been doing. Yet he knows that God is with him, and he will keep trusting and believing in that. Sometimes it's more difficult to believe that God is with you when times are good than it is to believe that God is with you or to act it out when times are tough. I'll show you what I mean. When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. Okay, so the Pharaoh is having a dream. Everybody's having dreams in this story. Pharaoh has a dream. Let me tell you a little bit about his dream. So he's having a dream this night, and he dreams about these cows, these cattle, and they're by the Nile River, and they're in this luscious green vegetation. They're growing big and fat and healthy and wonderful. And all of a sudden, he hears the theme song from Jaws. Dun, 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 dun. And out of the river jump these really scrawny, skinny, vampire-like cows. And they see the fat cows. They lick their little cow lips, and off they go, and they eat the fat cows, but they still remain skinny. He bolts out of bed, thinks it must have been the pizza, goes back to bed and falls asleep again, has a second dream. This particular time, it's a quiet, sort of melodious feeling. There is a single stalk of grain there blowing in the wind, and it's got 7 heads on it, and the 7 heads of grain are really healthy and big and vibrant. He's looking at it and thinking, man, that looks really cool. And all of a sudden, dun, 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 the Jaws music starts again. And these little scrawny heads of grain start showing up on this stalk. And then they see, with their little grainy eyes, these other grains, and they attack them and consume them, and they still stay skinny. And he wakes up, and he's really, really confused and sweaty, and realizes this is something really special. So he calls all of his advisors together, his magicians, all of his political, dudes, and brings them into a room. And it says, in the morning his mind was troubled, so he sent for all the magicians and wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told them his dreams, but no one could interpret them for him. No one could interpret them for him. And so you can see all these big shots standing around the room. They're advisors to the Pharaoh, and they can't help him at all with this. He's really agitated about it. They got their hands in their pockets and their shoulders are down. You can't, sorry, oh great one, we can't interpret it. And all of a sudden, just on the sidelines, there's the butler, the cupbearer, and he's got one of those aha moments, and remembers like Joseph. So he goes up to the Pharaoh and he says, "Oh, great potentate, just want to tell you, I think you're amazing and wonderful and marvelous, and I just want to suggest something. Again, if you don't like this, it's okay, but let me just tell you something. Oh, great bald one. Here's what I want to tell you. There has been, you remember a couple of years ago when the baker and we did something really bad and you threw us into prison? That was your right. You can do that. You're the great king. You can go ahead and do that. We went into prison. We went into this spot. And while we were in prison, we had these dreams. Both of us did. It's kind of weird, kind of wonky. We went, and there was this Hebrew guy who was kind of walking around in the prison and helping the warden. And I think his name was Joe or Joey or Joseph. It was weird. It was Hebrew, one of those weird Hebrew names. Anyway, we told him our dreams, And he interpreted them, and he said to the butler, like, in 3 days you're going to die. And I don't know if you remember, oh, great Pharaoh, but you took his head off. And rightly so. He's a bad butler, bad butler. And then, but for me, Joseph said to me, you're going to be restored to your position. And I just want to thank you for your mercy and your grace, oh, great Pharaoh, that you did that. I didn't deserve it. You're a wonderful man. Anyway, I'm wondering if this guy, I realize he's, like a Hebrew. He's not one of us. But I wonder, kind of, maybe, don't do this if you don't want to. I'm okay. I won't mention it again. You might think about asking him to come. Maybe he could help. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came before Pharaoh. I love the detail here. They give him a bath. They shave him. What it means, likely, is they shaved all of his head, okay? So his beard, his eyebrows, the top of his head. That's what Egyptians would do. They were very much into cleanliness, and there was a problem with lice. And so, in the prison especially, I don't know if any of you are feeling itchy, but it may have been that's why they shaved his head completely off at this particular point. They put good clothes on him, and he comes before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream. No one can interpret it, but I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. When you hear a dream, you can interpret it. This is a life-change moment for him. This is a game-changer moment, right? Here he is. He's been down all these years in prison, and now he's standing before the most powerful man on the planet right now, and this guy's asking him to interpret his dream, and woohoo, this is a great moment for him. Can you see the heart racing? Whoa, this is my moment. I said to you before that for some people it's more challenging to trust God when life is going well than when life is difficult. For some people it's more difficult to trust God when life is going well than to trust him when it is difficult. Remember we did this series on Samson? And if you remember the cycles that we went through with Samson, the nation of Israel would turn against God when? When things were going well. When things were going well. They would move into apostasy. They would worship other gods. And I want to say to you that one of the tough things that you can have is when things are going up and to the right, when everything is going in the way that you want it to, that can be a time when we can fall short of trusting God. You say, what would that look like, Ken? Well, imagine you're getting a job interview for this dream job that you had. Man, you can hardly wait to get this job. This is like, woohoo, what a moment. And as the guy is asking you questions, the gal is asking you questions in the interview, you have this temptation to fudge the facts a little bit, to say things that aren't necessarily true about you so that you can get the job. Or maybe it's an opportunity to make this big sale, this kind of like once in a lifetime sale opportunity to sell something big and get ahead, and it's been going so well, but this is the moment, this is the game changer for you if you can make this sale. And so you stretch the facts, you move beyond what you should be doing, you say things that aren't accurate, completely accurate, make promises you shouldn't be making so that you can make the sale. Maybe sometimes you're a person who's involved in the financial world, and you say to God, hey, God, look, I'm going to go in this meeting, I'm going to talk about economics, and you're not into economics, you're into worship and stained glass and so on. Why don't you just go home and wait for me there? It's okay, you do that. I'll go here, it'll be fine, I'll be fine. I don't need you with me for this. I'm going to go in and I'm going to deal with this issue and I'm going to get it right. Ever do that? What would a person in my situation do if that person knew that God was with them? What would they do? You know that God is with you in the minute of these game changer moments. What would you do? Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream. No one can interpret it, but I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. This is the moment. He's asking him the question. Here's what Joseph says. I cannot do it. I cannot do it. Oh, great potentate. It's wonderful to be here. I haven't had a bath. You don't know how long it's been since I had a bath, man. It's been a long time. And you know what? I love the clothes. Not real big on the haircut, but I'm sure, now that I've told you I can't do it, you're going to send me back to prison. And my hair will grow and the lice will come back. It'll be fine. I'll be okay. I'm going to go back there. I just want to tell you, oh, great potentate, oh, wonderful man who's a great leader, I cannot do it. And I can imagine right now that the butler's heart is pounding like crazy, right? Boom, 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 boom. I can't do it. Why would he say that? Watch this. It gets a little more. What he says this. I cannot do it, Joseph replied to Pharaoh, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. Now, I see the advisors kind of scratching their heads and going, oh, you stupid little Hebrew boy. How could you stand here and bring your God into the conversation? That is not politically correct. And not only is it not politically correct, but do you not realize you're standing in front of like a God? Like small g, I get it, but he's a God. Are you going to tell us that your God is bigger than him? That your God is better than all our gods? Is that what you're saying, little Hebrew boy? Is that what you're saying to us? What would a person in my situation do if that person knew that God was right there with them? What would he do? What would she do? So anyway, Joseph tells him the dream. Remember what he says? 7 years of plenty, then 7 years of famine. And the 7 years of famine are going to be worse than the 7 years of plenty. And Pharaoh is blown away by the interpretation. And if you know anything about the story, if you track Joseph, he's got this real management gift, this real administrative gift. When he was in Potiphar's home, he organized his home. When he was in the prison, he's organizing the prison for the warden. Now that he's standing in front of Pharaoh, he's telling him, oh, by the way, this is what I think you should do. You should gather up the food for the first 7 years. Make sure you got a lot more for the 7 years of famine. Have somebody look after that, and so on and so forth. Just explains the whole thing to him way beyond what he should have done, but that's his gift of being a manager. Here's what it says. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. Wow. Like, really? Like, the Pharaoh's like, you know what? I'm really impressed. You answered that dream really well. You interpreted. I love your plan. And I've known for you like, what, 45 minutes? I'm going to make you the second most powerful man in the world. There you go. What do you think of that? I like to make decisions quickly. Yeah, I figured that one out. I mean, isn't this wild that he would do that? I heard this question. I don't know if you've heard it before. It's kind of a cool question. It goes like this. What would a person in my situation do if that person knew that God was with them? What would they do? What would they do? Prison, palace. Prison, palace. God's with me. God's with me. God's with me. God's with me. I am always going to trust him. When things don't go the way I want them to go, I'm always going to trust him. When things go better than I ever wanted them to go, it's always about God, and he's always with me. And because he's always with me, I'm going to keep on trusting him. And some of you are here, and you're going through a terrible time. It's just been bad. Financially, relationally, health-wise, whatever it may be. And I want to tell you, here's an interesting question that you can ask. What would a person in my situation do if that person knew without a doubt that God was with them? Because you need to know that God is with you no matter where you are. And some of you, everything's going up and to the right, and it's just going so well. It's real easy to believe that it's you, it's not God. It's real easy for us not to say what Joseph says. I cannot do it, but my God can. My God can. And I'm going to keep trusting him. Do you see the peace and the strength and the confidence and the stability that this brings into our lives? When we all know that God is with us, and we not just know it here, we know it how we live out our world. It's just so beautiful, so wonderful. I want to tell you that that's a game changer. That will change your life radically, absolutely radically. It will reorient how you see things, reorient how you see yourselves, reorient how you see your God, and I believe put you in a place where God can use you in the prison and in the palace in a great, great way. Will you bow your heads with me? If you're here this morning and you're someone who is practicing the presence of God and you have found that strength to be there, I just want to encourage you. I just want to tell you just to hang in there. You know, the beautiful thing about the Bible is that it takes truth and it needs it into life. And so you see a man by the name of Joseph who's experiencing the highs and the lows, and yet he continues to believe God is with him. So I would ask you to just do the same thing. Just be thanking God for that and hanging on to that truth, and know that you're doing the right thing and that God is using you in great ways. For those of you who are here, who are in the prison right now, and it's been just going downhill and it's been hurting, and it doesn't seem any daylight out there, and you're wondering how God can love you when you're going through all this, and how many more things are you going to get, and it just doesn't seem fair. Why me? Why not my brothers? Why not my sisters? Why not that person over there? Why is this happening to me? I want to urge you, and I know I don't know your circumstance, and I know this may seem a little unfair. I don't understand, but I want you to urge you to embrace the pattern of Joseph. I want you just to grab hold of it. and say, what would a person in my situation do if they knew that God was with them? And I know that God is with me. I'm going to not just know it, I'm going to live it. And if you're here and things are going up to the right and it's just been so successful and your life is just an amazingly wonderful experience, please be careful that you start believing it's about you, that you start acting in ways that violate the presence of God in your world. Keep trusting him. Keep trusting him. Heavenly Father, I thank you for everybody who's here. And I thank you for you, because you're here. You're here in this room. You're here everywhere we go. You know our thoughts before we think them. You know the struggles before we face them. You know the victories before we enjoy them. And I thank you for being that kind of God. And even as we are here this morning, I pray that, Heavenly Father, this truth that you're with us would just drill itself down deep inside, and that we would practice it, embrace it, live it out for your glory, for our good. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.